I have one question for you. Does size matter? What's going on, guys? Carter here with Edged Mindset. Today we are looking at the Microtech LUDT Generation 3 side opening automatic. That's a mouthful. It's a big title. So this is in the Gen 3 Microtech lineup that just launched. So as such, it features a lot of upgrades and things. Before I jump into it, before we start looking at this knife specifically and touch on the complaint of this knife that it is too small, because that is the number one thing I hear. People have bought this knife, they put it up for sale, they say it's much too small for them, they don't like it. 2 points before we start diving into this knife with full review style is that this knife is no smaller than the previous versions. It is the exact same size as the previous LUDTs, which, by the way, stands for Large Underwater Demolition Team. They did make a small, I believe, or maybe a medium in the past as well. This is actually the large. Number one complaint is that it's too small, and this is the large, which is kind of interesting. The other thing I want to point on is the concept of the Gen 3 Microtechs, right? And what that means and how it's structured. So it's looking like Microtech is taking a page out of Glock's book in terms of how they mark their generations. So the generation marking, the Gen 3 designation, appears to follow Microtech and not the knives, similar to Glock. For example, Glock is currently in Gen 5. However, not all firearms in that designation have actually been around for that many generations. In fact, Gen 1 Glocks were just the Glock 17 for all intents and purposes, and a lot of models didn't even debut till Gen 2. So even though a particular gun in the Glock lineup is marked as a Gen 5, it doesn't mean they've actually been around for 5 generations. Seems like Microtech is kind of doing the same thing. They're calling these updates all Gen 3, regardless of whether that particular knife has gone through all 3 generations or not. And you'll see that in the Scarab 2 designation, which gets really confusing. They're calling it Scarab 2 Gen 3, even though the Scarab 2 has only ever existed for 1 generation. The previous generation of Scarab was the Scarab 1, or just the Scarab, the QD Scarab, but they're still calling it Scarab Gen 3. So just to clear that up there, this is Gen 3 LUDT. I'm not actually sure if there's been 3 generations of the LUDT. There may have been more, actually. But so let's kick this off. Now that I'm done rambling about that, what do we have here? Let's do tip to butt, baby. Let's talk about the blade. So this is using the standard Microtech steel that they are using right now, which is the M390MK. It's a proprietary blend from Bowler, who makes M390. The MK, they just tweak some things. For all intents and purposes, it's just M390. Some say that it's slightly better mix with slightly better properties. Other people say it's the exact same. My take on it is it all comes down to heat treat. Microtech has not been particularly known for doing great heat treats on their M390. Hoping that's changed, but I haven't seen any evidence of it. Drop point blade on this one, flat grind. It is reasonably thin. We can get a measurement on that in case you care. Let's see how thick we talking about here. So we'll just grab towards the end here. So 0.13 on the thickness. You've got a nice fuller going on at the top. This is a new feature on this generation. Purely visual. Obviously, it's an automatic, so you can't manually flick this open. There is some chatter about potentially having a manual version of this knife, which this would come in handy, but we'll see if that happens. There's a crown spine. You've got some medium jimping here, but it is kind of on a ramp, so that helps it. I wish this was a little bit grippier. It's a tad bit weak for my taste. This particular one has partial serrations. You can get it in plain edge. I don't believe they have full serration yet, and the Tanto version will be coming out very, very soon. The body of this bad boy is 6061 aluminum, just like the previous generations. However, this one has some titanium action going on. You've got a titanium backspacer now. Previous generations was just more of a clam shell construction where the 2 sides of aluminum would meet. No titanium, no backspacer. So really a pretty cool visual thing going on here, and it allows you some extra cleanability because it'd be easier to blast this out. You could take some brake free or something and just blast this completely out, and then put some lubrication in there and you're good to go. Button lock, obviously being an automatic, uses a plunge lock system with a spring in there. Here is the stop pin, nice and robust. You can see that it actions quite well because this one's actually running on bearings, which is a first for this particular model. Not a first for Microtech. I believe this guy is running on bearings as well. This is the SOCOM Elite. This is the other flagship side opening model that Microtech has. We can do a quick visual size comparison there, and then we'll do a paramilitary 2 per usual at the bottom. You can get a feeling for how big it is. So kind of in the middle, right? Smaller than a paramilitary 2, smaller than, well, not in the middle, it's smaller than both. Smaller than the SOCOM Elite, smaller than the Para 2. It is on the smaller size. Bent steel pocket clip back here, and then you've got these grip inserts. These are 3M inserts, and they are the new kind of rubberized inserts that we saw on the Scarab 2 knife as well, and is featured on the SOCOM Elite for quite some time. So this knife really is just kind of getting an upgrade to match what's already been used in the SOCOM Elite for since its upgrade like a year or two ago. Got a lanyard hole back here so you can put some paracord through like I did. The original LUDTs came with a simple lanyard. This new one does not, so I threw this guy on there. Backspacer wraps all the way around. And as you can see, this is a very carryable knife. Let's do some more comparisons here between the SOCOM Elite and the LUDT. You can see how much thinner it is. Let's do a weight, even though my lanyard is going to throw this off. So take this with a grain of salt. That lanyard's going to add some weight. 3.8 ounces. I would guess that it's probably around 3.5 ounces without this titanium lanyard bead and paracord on there. So very, very light. Now let's talk about the complaint about it being too small. I don't think it's too small at all. I think it is perfectly sized. It is a very adequate, it's a very adequate size. I can fit a full grip onto this handle. Any smaller, and I would struggle with that a little bit, or if my fingers were any fatter, I would struggle with that, but I can get all 4 fingers in here. But even if I couldn't, you know, this is not terribly uncomfortable if I was going to hang a pinky off here. It's not too bad. This grip really feels good on your fingers. You get a nice purchase. You've got the ramp with the jimping. Very, very usable knife and very easy to carry, very lightweight. I think the people saying it's too small are just folks that are more into larger style knives, which Microtech is kind of known for. If you get into Microtech, most models are large. Smaller knives are kind of more rare. For example, in the OTF Microtech world, you've got the original Hera design. That was on the smaller size. I don't think it did all that well. The only knives that really seem to do well in Microtech that are smaller are the LUDT and then the UTX-85 and UTX-70, which is the smaller version of the Ultratech, or the Ultratech itself, if you consider that one a small OTF. The concept of small, all jokes and puns aside, is very subjective to individual people and what they consider to be a small knife. I know, for example, my definition, and I am, once again, no puns here, it's kind of changed over the years. I used to think anything under a 4-inch blade was small. Now it's been adjusted where anything under a 3.4-inch blade I consider to be small. So it does kind of change with the times and what's popular and what's available and things like that. I, for one, really like this knife. Oh, the other thing that people have complained about is a sticky button. So they fire it and they go to unlock it and this button sticks. And from what it sounds like, not just a little bit, not just like an annoying thing, but like you can barely undo it. I do not have that issue on my knife. I would suspect that it's something that will wear in over time, or it's possible that maybe there was just a little bit of oil that got on that lock face, because if you get oil on a steel-on-steel lock face, or any lock face really, it will cause that to seat and connect more than it should. For example, though, too, if I just slowly open this, I get a little bit of stick. But even that is that's gone down since I've owned this and used it. So I think the stickiness will go away, but I do get a little bit if I lightly open it. But if it does a full open, I don't get any stick at all, or at least nothing notable. So if you are having stick, try cleaning it out. You might just have a little bit of oil on that lock face, or just let it break in. You should be good to go. I don't think it's an actual problem. Okay, guys, so in conclusion, the LUDT is an excellent EDC side opening automatic knife, and I personally welcome these updates. I think this looks a lot better, and honestly, I think it's functionally a lot better too. It would be really cool if I had an original previous generation LUDT to do a comparison. I would like to see weights and things like that, but unfortunately, this is the first LUDT that I have ever owned, and being that I'm not the biggest side opening automatic fan, probably the last I'm going to buy. Never say never, but very possibly the last I'm going to buy. So let me know down below, do you have the LUDT? Do you like it? Do you agree with these updates? Do you think it's a step forward, or do you think it's just a marketing gimmick to sell more knives? All right, guys, talk to you later.